Hi, I'm Chris Nedza, Lead Entrepreneur in Residence of the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech. We're the state of Georgia's technology incubator. Welcome to Season 1 of the ATDC podcast, Executive Bytes. We focus on the startup founders in our portfolio, what sparked them to launch their companies, the market problem they've solved, and even how they overcame the thoughts of quitting when times get rough. Enjoy. Okay, so today's Executive Bytes session is going to be with Dan McCann of SymTrain. Before I start with you, Dan, I want to introduce Sander Biehn, who is the CEO of another one of our ATDC signature companies, a company called Ready for Social. So, Sander, thanks for joining me as we put Dan McCann on the hot seat.
Nice.
Always my pleasure to put Dan on the hot seat.
Right?
I'll take it.
He's tough, man. One little small fun fact that I want people to know about you is that you actually still play baseball.
It is actually right. I just got home from a baseball tournament this weekend, as a matter of fact. We lost in the championship just yesterday.
You're playing with 10-year-olds or?
Yeah, over 50. So people way older than me.
Yeah, right. They snuck you in under the wire. So, hey, Dan, I love your technology because I actually have played with it. I've seen it, but it's an AI coaching platform, correct? Did I get that right?
100%. AI coaching to help employees learn how to perform their job. That's exactly what it is.
All right. So how did you come up with this idea? What's the pain that you all were solving or addressing?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you can give people knowledge, and it's really hard to learn how to apply that knowledge. I don't know about you guys, but I always called it the aha moment to my employees. Like, give it some time. Give it time. You'll get that aha moment. You'll figure it out, right? And I just didn't think that was fair. It just wasn't fair to them, right? Like, you figure it out over time. Like, learn on the job, learn on our customers. You do it. So we had to come up with a way to teach them how to apply knowledge and learn how to do it. And it's role play, right? It's role play exercise and activities.
Wait, hold on.
We just automated it.
What do you mean by it's role play?
Look, if I'm going to learn something, right? If you're going to teach me how to hit a baseball, I'm going to have to go take a bunch of swings off of a tee and then do some soft toss and then go to batting practice, right? That's role play, right? I'm practicing my job in a simulated scenario. That's exactly what we do for employees.
So give me an example of a company that would use it. You don't have to use names of the company, but give me a generic example.
Yeah, the generic example is largest banks in the world, largest healthcare payers and providers. Financial institutions, insurance companies, ones that you know about, right?
But I'm an employee,
yeah,
and I'm using SymTrain, the platform,
yeah,
right? Because it's a digital platform. How am I, as an employee, interacting with that software?
Yeah, and it depends on your tenure, right? If you're pre-hire, you're going to interact with it maybe through an applicant tracking system, or the recruiting folks are going to ask you to run an exercise in SymTrain to show that you know how to do a job, and you get some visibility into what that job might be like, right? But then you could be a new hire, which is totally different experience. It could be embedded in your learning management system or part of your onboarding process as you're coming in, and you get that repetition and reinforcement to go through these exercises over and over till you build confidence and skills. My favorite is when you're a tenured agent, when you're in role and you're there for a while, and that ongoing coaching. That's one of the hardest things that companies need to figure out is, how do we scale coaching? How do we have it consistent? And how do we deliver it in a way that we know our employees are actually doing the work? And SymTrain gives you all that visibility and gives the employee the practice to go learn the things that they need to improve and work on based on how well they're doing each and every day.
So Dan, give me an example. Who is going to use this? What employee? I'm an employee of a company. Give me an example of how somebody is going to interact with SymTrain's platform.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you think about your customer experience type of employees, your CX people, right? Those are sales, service, and support roles. And for the most part, our customers are in the contact center. They're contact center agents that fill those roles.
Call center?
Yeah, call center, contact center, those agents that are supporting the customer for these major, they're basically Fortune 1000 companies and those brands. And think about it, right? So I'm learning how to do my job, or I'm doing my job every day, and I have a targeted exercise or a group of targeted exercises that are saying, Dan, Here's how to handle this conversation with a difficult customer or someone who's lost or confused, and you got to guide them there, right? And you got to get them there. So go practice. Have the phone call. Navigate the software. Do it right in SymTrain. That's what we do.
Okay, so SymTrain actually helps them learn the conversation the way that it needs to be done.
Yes.
So they're practicing through role play, and it can also embed the screen that they're engaging with for the call and the questions and everything else, the responses. So you can train them on how to use the software as well as the conversation. Do I get that right?
Yes, and in Contact Center they do that at the same time quite often. Or you can break it up, right? I can just learn how to use software, or I can just learn how to have a one-to-one conversation with a prospect or a customer, or I can learn chat or email, digital communications as well. So that's the beauty of SymTrain, is you can do it together or separate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So my question is, I mean, we were talking earlier, you started this 6 years ago, you said?
Yeah, 6 years ago.
Yeah, so that puts us back 2018. So, you know, I still remember this period with the pandemic that we went through.
Yeah.
How did that affect, I would think that would have been in some ways a catalyst for you. I mean, how did that period affect, when you were talking to people about SymTrain?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. And here's the thing. It's definitely a tailwind that came through, right? Because people needed to go work from home. They needed to be remote, and they needed technology to help guide them there. It wasn't quite the tailwind that I hoped it would be, because what companies were doing is they were a little bit behind, right?
Yeah.
I optimize performance. I make your people way better. That's what I do. They just needed to, how do we use Teams or Zoom, or how do I communicate with people from home instead of sitting right next to me? That was a bigger problem for them at the time. So optimizing for performance and excellence, that's happening now. So the tailwind of COVID is hitting now. So when people are using Zoom, they're using these disparate technologies to communicate to folks all over geographies on a global touch and global play. And it's been fun. This year's been awesome. Last year we've been growing, over 100% every year because of the outcome of COVID, right? And really driven down.
So another little thing that happened. So you had the pandemic,
Yeah.
and then you had this little thing called AI.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Happen. So before, somebody had to literally think about every question that a customer would ask and the responses to that, right?
Yes.
And now you guys are fully AI enabled. What did that do for you?
Yeah, so if you think about it this way, back in 2018, I was selling training simulations or simulated training, SymTrain, right? And now it's AI coaching. Because of AI. And so where we've spent all our time with AI is using it to build content faster, better, right? And even smarter. Like I mentioned the targeted exercises based on what Chris Nedza needs to work on or what Sander's working on, right? Where do you need help? We'll target those exercises very intelligently based on reading your call recordings and QA data that's telling SymTrain, here are the exercises we need to build. That's awesome, right? So instant library, instant sims. Like we build content in 7 minutes. One of our
a sim. What's a sim?
Yeah, great. So a sim is an actual exercise. It's a coaching exercise for an agent, right, to learn how to do a skill, right? And we call it a sim. And we have
a sim would be disgruntled employee or a disgruntled customer calls the call center. So here is the simulation on how to deal with disgruntled customers. Would that be an example of a sim?
Yeah, like think about it in insurance, right? Disgruntled customer, calls in because they have a claim and nobody's called them back, right? And they got to get on with their life, right? So help them.
Before you were around, before SymTrain, I mean, to me it sounds very obvious, right? How did companies do this before? Because I imagine large companies don't move that fast, so they're probably engaged in the same old way. How did they do it in the past?
I was going to say the past is the current, my friend, right? Is the way they do it today is all manual. It's 100% manual. Role play, right? One-on-one role plays.
So
right?
you
phone
give them,
jacking.
They have manuals like here's the manual of a disgruntled customer. Take this home, stand in front of a mirror, and read the script. Hello, my name is.
Right. When I say manual, I mean like human, right? It's a human exercise. It's not digital, right? It's not automated. It's just something they had to do. They phone jacked and listened in and gave feedback. They did role plays. They did round tables, right? Like we get 10 people together and it's your turn, Chris. Go ahead, let's practice this exercise.
How are you going to say it? Oh, I would hate that.
Oh,
Would you
yeah.
hate that?
Oh.
I would hate that.
It's kind
Worse
of
than the
cool.
hot seat.
No, but look, like we're getting along, right? Like we're having fun and getting along. If I'm a new hire in a company, I get to meet you and get to know you, sit down with you. So it's kind of a neat thing for culture building. But for building a skill, if we sat and there's 12 at a table, I'm going to get one exercise every 2 hours. Think about that. In SymTrain, you get 40 exercises in 2 hours.
But even that, I mean, if we were to, like chatting like three guys, no problem. But if you were to say, hey, Chris, I want you to tell me, I'll be the disgruntled customer, and you practice in front of everybody, and you say it exactly the right way. I'm going to tell you, I would freeze up. I would hate it. I'd be embarrassed. Yeah, it would be a joke.
You know, it's so funny.
I mean, that's how companies are doing it today, right?
Yeah, that's what they do, right? So, but back in 2018, or when we were planning, 16, 17, we really thought this tool was going to be for folks fresh into the workforce, right? First job, like build a skill. No, you know who loves this the most? Is the experienced, tenured people who have 20 years of experience, and you and I sit down. So the expectation I have of you is at a certain level. And then you're like, oh man, you get so frustrated because you want to practice, you want to build. It's like, I can do this, I know it, but give me a few times. Let me go through it a couple. Let me build that skill here.
Yeah, it's
Let
like
me
a muscle
work on
memory
it.
of like how to deal with it. I can see that with the more experienced people loving that a lot more. And so when you sell it to those call centers, contact centers, and big companies you're working with, are you talking about those kind of advantages? Where do you talk about the ROI or the advantage of 10x better than doing it the old-fashioned way? I mean, do you look at that with the new hires, with the existing people, both? How do you?
And even pre-hire candidates, right? I was talking about all three of those, right? So no, it's all of the above, and that's the coolest thing. So the ROI, when you really drill into the ROI on SymTrain, we'll give you a 10 to 20x just on efficiency. What's the time and cost it takes me to onboard or coach an agent? 10 to 20x ROI on your time and the cost of that. Then what happens is like, what's the impact of getting them there faster, speed to proficiency, speed to green, if you will. Bill them faster or get them to perform better. And then all of a sudden you start going off the charts into like 50x, 60x stuff if you really tweak and drill in. But the beauty is with SymTrain, because it's a 10 to 20x just on efficiency, you'll get that ROI in the first 30 days of deploying the solution. It's awesome.
Fantastic. I know I actually thought it would be a good product for the hair salon industry because as a customer, when you walk in to get a consultation, every person does it a different way, right? So how do they practice? It just the way you described it.
Yep.
So they don't really practice. So they really aren't making recommendations and educating the customer and having a great experience. Those that are natural are good at it, but those that need help and practice, there's not a really good way for them to do it. I think this is a tremendous product for that industry and many others. I mean, anything where you're having your front line speaking to a customer, I would want this product, I would think.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, like, if you have talked to gig workers, if other people, like companies out there, like an Uber or even a restaurant for that matter, because those are really gig workers, the people who are doing the server job, but all the areas where this is vital to.
So you know where gig work is huge? In the contact center.
I can imagine.
Huge gig worker community, right? And we're talking about millions of users. So think about this. Our vision is an AI coach for everyone. Everyone should have a coach dedicated to their success. That's our vision. Now, our resource pool says there's 18 million contact center workers in CX. There's another 30 million back office. That's a 50 million human being community or target market for us. So we're going after that and going after it hard, right? If you think about it, I mean, we're closing in on 100,000 users, which is insanely successful. But that's 100,000 out of 18 million. Right, and so my market share is like razor thin. You could cut that with a razor and say, hey, what's SymTrain's market share, right? The market opportunity.
Even growing at 100% a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the market opportunity is absurd. And so from a resource calibration, look, when I go sell to a healthcare payer, my people need to become experts on just language, talking to them about open enrollment and the challenges they have, right? So it's not good enough to just say, hey, I understand what it takes to onboard somebody and how problematic it is to get them up to speed to apply knowledge. Now, we have to convey that in their language to say, in open enrollment, it's even harder because you're hiring agents to perform very specific tasks around, onboarding members into changing their healthcare plans, right? And it's like, think about it. And then in banking, it's collections, right? And or fraud or mortgage. So we don't have to become experts in all that, but we need to at least communicate with our clients in the verticalized approach at their level, at their language, right? Yeah. And so there's only so much we can do and have the resources to do, even though it's an AI coach for everyone, right? Starting with these few, right? And few is 18 million. So I'm going to be happy if we get.
I'm curious if that's changed over time. Like when you first started, were you out there like take on the world and you thought that this could go everywhere, or did you?
What a great question, right? So yes, we boiled the ocean as best we could, as often as we could, and learned like, hey, you if you want to be successful, you got to verticalize and you got to segment, right? Yeah. And the best part is what we just talked about. You have to speak their language. You know why Chris had such success in the salon space? Because he's an expert. He's knowledgeable. He ran a conference, right? He had a software that helped not just stylists and consultations, but front desk salon people know how to build their business better. So if I own a salon, I'm going to look to Chris Nedza and say, hey, look, I know your software can help me, but I also know that you can help me. You're an expert, and your company are experts in our space. So it's definitely a great thing from a segmentation to have that sort of focus.
So you really dial in. Dan, I'll tell you, just before we got started, you were kind of chilled out and sitting back in the chair, and we were worried whether you'd have some enthusiasm and juice, man. I'm like,
you weren't. I know you weren't.
I wasn't really worried. I've talked to you before.
Dan wasn't, obviously.
You're right. I was like, okay, man, when he goes, he goes. So
I love this stuff, man. Look, when I was in college, I wanted to be a coach, right? I wanted to teach high school and be a coach. And now I have the opportunity. I'm coaching almost 100,000 people, and I have an opportunity to be a coach for 1 million people, like within maybe a couple years, right?
You definitely get Coach of the Year for that one.
I think so. When we hit 1 million, I definitely want Coach of the Year.
But you also have a really super talented team that are executing on the vision. Your team is top notch, So I just want to thank you for being a guest today, and
awesome.
I'm fired up. I love what your product is. I've played with it. It's beyond me that there isn't, like, every customer out there ought to be beating the door down to it. I love your enthusiasm. Sander, you're amazing as well.
Well, thank you. It's just a pleasure to be here with you guys, and thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I loved it. I love it. Yeah. And we're banging their doors down to let them know about it and get them aware that this solution exists.
Yep.
And get using it. And what's cool is once people use it, they get addicted. They're like, oh, this is neat. I like this, right? So our net revenue retention's off the charts, right?
You're a land and expand kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's get in. Let's show it works. Let's prove that ROI. We tell people $250 every hour you're in SymTrain, just on that efficiency number. It's off the charts, and your people are going to love it too. So that's where I get excited when people say like, "Hey, this was a game changer for me. This is the best thing I've ever had to help me learn how to do my job." I geek out on that stuff.
And that goes back to your interest in being a coach.
Yeah,
so it's really cool.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thanks, sir.
And thank you for being an ATDC addition. You're a fantastic person in our group. So thank you very much, and look forward to catching up. Next episode.
Yeah, just as a plug, right? You mentioned my team is awesome, and they are, right? And it's a global workforce, but my team starts at ATDC, right? And the other CEOs that I sit with, once a week, and having access to people who have been there before and have done it, Chris, like yourself, getting counsel and guidance and feedback, just even people to be able to talk to and say, here's some struggles and things I'm challenged with. Oh yeah, I dealt with that, and here's some thoughts and ways to do that. It's a great community to be part of. ATDC's been a big help to SymTrain.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Thank 100%. You so much.
Cool. Love it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the ATDC podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, and share or connect wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to follow us on social media. Our handle is @ATDC on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram.